Hello, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. Hi, I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. We're based right out of Main Street in downtown Hayward. And today I'm going to update you a little bit on short-term rentals in Sawyer County. If you've been following this at all, there was quite a bit of upheaval surrounding this subject mostly in the year of 2024, and then a decision made in October of 2024, which actually impacted the majority of the short-term rentals in Sawyer County. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what's going on with that, the new ruling that actually just went into effect on April 1st of 2025, so just a couple of weeks ago, and also what to look for in a vacation rental, short-term rental, if you're looking to purchase that as an investor, or maybe you want to buy it for yourself and your family, but then also rent it out on water, off water, all of that, and give you some insights on what you may want to look for if you're thinking of purchasing a short-term rental in Sawyer County. So stay tuned. Hopefully this information will be helpful. Before I dive into this, I just want to say, as always, if you're looking to buy or sell, or you just have general questions about the area or want to pick my brain on something, feel free to reach out to me by text, phone, email. And I would also love if you would subscribe and follow along with my channel, share it with somebody that you think might find it to be of interest, or comment. I always love to hear from my viewers, that's for sure. And I would love to have more interaction on the channel. If you feel like you'd like to leave a comment or ask a question or propose a subject that you'd like me to talk about in a video, if I feel I have the knowledge and expertise, I'd be happy to do that. So what has happened in Sawyer County over the last couple years is that there were some concerns and I'll say complaints or subject brought up to Sawyer County zoning and the Health and Human Services Department from folks in the community who were concerned about the number of short-term rentals that we have. And probably the biggest complaint is sometimes people that come to short-term rentals can be kind of noisy. There's a lot of people coming and going. They're in vacation mode. You know, it's a little bit different than having a neighbor next door who might be there full time and is a little bit quieter. However, nothing can guarantee for you whether or not your neighbor will be a short-term rental facility. Maybe they'll sell it and you'll have a quieter neighbor one day. Maybe you have a neighbor who's there full-time, but they have lots of people over and they have parties every weekend. So I think that the concern is valid, but this is kind of life to me. You live in an unpredictable world. You don't know who your neighbors are going to be. And part of making your way through this world is getting along with whoever happens to be next door to you. I personally know several friends of mine who have short-term rentals next to their property, and they're good with it. You know, they don't have a lot of issues. They say, yes, there's more people coming and going. You know, sometimes they can be a little loud, but in the scope of things, it's my opinion, and I think the opinion of a lot of people in our community, that this is actually a good thing for our community. It brings commerce to the area. Everybody that comes here on vacation is spending money at the local bars and restaurants. They are participating in the economy of our community, and the short-term rental stay has become so popular that a lot of people are choosing to do that. It's also a way that people learn about the area and maybe decide later that they want to purchase something here. So I personally think there's a lot of pros to it, but I understand some of the cons that people, have brought up. So I think I was not in the midst of this or on the board or anything, but I believe that's what kind of drove Sawyer County to do a broad review of the short-term rental policies. They actually call them tourist rooming houses. So TRH is the actual word in Sawyer County for short-term rentals. But the tourist rooming house ordinances all were put under review. There was a committee that was formed back in 2023, I believe, or maybe early 2024. And this went through a lot of meetings. There's a lot of information online if you want to kind of research what led up to the decisions. There were different ideas put out there in terms of, at one point it was going to be based on your actual septic rating for your house, because one of the complaints is that there's too many people crammed into these houses. When you're purchasing a short-term rental or running a short-term rental, beds and heads, they say, the more people that you can fit in the place, the more profit, because people can share costs or they can just have a bigger family staying there. So that was one of the concerns, is about the over occupancy that some people felt was happening with the short-term rentals. And then sometimes not having anyone close by. These owners of short-term rentals might be 3, 6, 10 hours away. So if there's an issue, they're not able to respond, and how to handle that. So those were some of the things that were addressed in this decision. And I'm just going to kind of go through some of the high points of this new policy that just went into effect as of April 1st of 2025. And just so you know, we do have almost 600 TRH, tourist rooming house short-term rental licenses in Sawyer County. And in this video, I'm just focusing on Sawyer County because this is the one that had the changes that happened. Washburn is actually, I would say, a little bit more lenient. So if you have a property in Washburn County, you may not have quite as many restrictions on the short-term rental, and you can check into that with the county zoning. But this is focusing on Sawyer County, where Hayward is located. All of the tier 1 lakes that I talk about are within Sawyer County, and those are some of the most prominent rentals that garner the highest prices as well. And then at the end here, I'm just gonna hit the high points of what changes were made so that you, whether you're a seller or an owner who currently has a short-term rental, whether you're potentially looking to purchase a short-term rental for yourself and your family or for income purposes, if you're an investor looking to invest in a short-term rental in Sawyer County, I'm just gonna hit the high points of these changes because part of my job or goal here on my YouTube channel is to keep you informed of things that may impact you in Sawyer County, whether you're buying or selling. And at the end, I'm just gonna give a few thoughts on if you're looking to purchase a short-term rental, just a few things to keep in mind regarding that. So the main changes that happened, this was put into effect and finally signed off on October 17th of 2024 and took effect just a few weeks ago on April 1st of 2025, like I mentioned. So to me, the highlights of what changed are three things. One is that the occupancy is now limited based on the number of bedrooms you have in the house. And you might ask, what qualifies as a bedroom? The Sawyer County zoning references the sanitary portion of the state legislature code, SPF 382 and 383. So you could look that up. But from my research, I believe that a bedroom is a room that has a door. It is at least 70 square feet and it has to have a window. Doesn't necessarily need to have a closet, but it has to have two exits. So one of those typically would be a window and one would be a stairs or an outside door or, that kind of thing. I did research whether lofts can be considered bedrooms for the purpose of this discussion with the short-term rentals. It looks to me, again, anything I say, please verify with Sawyer County zoning or Health and Human Services if you want to make sure of the information. But I believe that if a loft has a window and 50% of the loft has ceiling height ceilings, so it's not like just a short 4-foot, 5-foot walls. So 50% of the loft has normal height ceilings. That can also be considered a bedroom. So essentially you can have 2 people for every bedroom in your home, and then you can have 2 additional people total. So if you have a 4-bedroom home, you've got the 8 people, 2 per bedroom, and then you have the extra 2, so you could rent out to 10 people. If you have a 2-bedroom home, using the same math, you could rent out to 6 people in terms of occupancy. Additionally, one of the objectives of the committee and of kind of bringing both sides of this issue together and compromising was that people surrounding a short-term rental are given a little more notification that it is a short-term rental. And also there is this implementation of what they call an owner's agent. So if you're an out-of-town person who is running a short-term rental in Sawyer County and you're not around and you're not able to respond to issues or complaints that could come up, you need to have someone who is the owner's agent that is within 60 minutes of the property so that they could go there upon short notice if needed. So that's one change. And, this is where property managers come into play. Maybe somebody that that's local, that's willing to handle that for you. It's something that maybe even as a real estate agent, we would be willing to do if we live close to a property or could respond to something like that. But the owner's agent must be within 60 minutes of the property. And then the other kind of changes that came into effect are that you need to have signage indicating that it is a short-term rental, and it specifically says a weatherproof sign, 8 to 10 inches, tells you where it needs to be posted. And you also need to, on an annual basis, notify any neighbors within 300 feet of your property as to whether you are going to be doing short-term rental activities at your property in that coming year. Now, if you were renting your home out short-term and then you decided not to, of course, you can take your signage down. You don't need to have the owner's agent. That can be flexible depending on whether you are or are not choosing to continue to rent it out. I think the biggest impact with this really is the occupancy limits, because in the past there weren't really any that I'm aware of. So sometimes a 4-bedroom house might have slept 16 people because they've got a family room with a pull-out couch, or they've got a bedroom with bunk beds and there's 4 people in one bedroom instead of 2, or you have an upper level and lower level family room that is being used as sleeping space. So this has had a potential negative impact upon those short-term rental owners who were having a higher occupancy, and now they need to cut that down. So that may affect rates a little bit, or what they they can get for the property for a week, etc. But that's probably the biggest change to be aware of. I think that Sawyer County in general is very friendly towards short-term rentals, and I myself am actually looking to purchase my first one, hopefully in 2025. So there is a lot of groups of people that could be looking to do that. Like I mentioned, you might be an investor looking to turn a profit. You may be someone who is going to be retiring in 5 or 10 years, but you want to get your property now, use it sometimes, rent it out the rest of the time, and then in the long run live here full time. Or you may be someone who just wants to rent it out occasionally to supplement your mortgage payment and all of that. So just a few tips or pieces of advice from me if you're looking to purchase a short-term rental. Waterfront obviously garners the highest prices, and the tier 1 lakes again garner the highest prices in terms of what you can get for the property for a week's rental. People typically in the summertime will rent for a week. Some do less nights, but on the water, usually it's from Saturday to Saturday. We have some rentals on some of the tier 1 lakes that can get up to $4,500 a week. I think your best resource if you want to have an idea of what people are getting is just simply to go on Vrbo or Airbnb, look at other properties that are similar to the one you're considering and see what they're able to get for a weekly stay or a nightly rate, that kind of thing. The waterfront properties, my advice on that would be to try to have swimmable frontage because that's a big draw. The tier 1 lakes, like I said, get the highest prices. That doesn't mean that you can't get something on another lake that will be very, very rentable. Just the price that you're going to pay for the property will be more on a tier 1 lake, and then you can get more for your weekly rental. If you go to tier 2 or tier 3 lake, then you'll pay less for the property typically, but you'll have a little less income from it. So it kind of all comes out in the wash in terms of that. But I think, having a higher number of bedrooms is important due to the new regulations, being on swimmable frontage, being on a nice, clean, clear lake, and then location-wise, Hayward and Stone Lake area are going to get the highest prices because that, as I've said many times, is the hub of the vacation area. Let's just break it down a little bit. Let's say you are able to purchase a property on a tier 1 lake for around $1 million. You put your 20% down for your loan, you're borrowing $800,000. Your monthly payment for your mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate, which is about where we are right now, maybe a little bit less, would be about $5,000 a month. And then you've got your property taxes. If you're on a tier 1 lake, your taxes may be somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000. And then you have your homeowner's insurance, plus of course the costs of the short-term rental, such as cleaning, there's maintenance, things that need to be done if you're paying a property manager, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not really talking about property management today, but if you need insights on that, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you some recommendations, give you an idea of what property managers typically charge in the area and that kind of thing. So then if you are able to earn, let's say $4,000 a week, $4,500 a week for that property, understandably, the hot season for rentals is summertime. I think everybody knows that. So we have what we call the 100-day window here, Memorial Day to Labor Day. Every short-term renter owner that I have spoken with says they are basically booked solid for that time frame. Of course, if their property is priced within the range that it should be, per week. So that is almost a given from what I've heard from people that you will have it rented during that 100-day window. Anything beyond that is just a plus. And a lot of places definitely rent beyond that. You've got May with fishing opener and fishermen coming. You have snowmobiling season. You have the leaf peepers in the fall. That's typically an older crowd after the kids have gone back to school. So there's definitely ability to rent outside of that window. But I think that that's like the income you can count on when you're running your numbers, crunching your numbers and seeing what might work. So it seems to me you could easily cover your mortgage payment and probably have some to put towards your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And many rentals turn a profit. And again, this is not something I'm going to delve into, but I'm just kind of giving you the overview. Now, let's say conversely, you decide to do an off-water property. Obviously, your investment is much less. Let's say you pay $300,000 for a little cabin in the woods. My advice on those would be to have some privacy. Access to snowmobile and ATV trails would be huge. Proximity to area lakes. And of course, something that's updated and clean and nice. Everybody wants a clean, nice looking, comfortable place to stay. So those would be some of my pieces of advice for off-water. And then let's say you spend $300,000 for this cabin. You put 20% down. Again, you're borrowing around $260,000. Now your payment is about $1,600 a month at a 6.5% interest rate. So again, a week's rental for that property might be around $1,400-$1,500, just as a broad, idea. So you're kind of in the same situation in terms of profitability, depending on how many days you rent it out, all of that, but you should be able to easily cover your mortgage plus some. And these are just, like I said, some basic overviews. There's people who are smarter than I am with all of this, and there's definitely people who are investors who have purchased rental properties and they know how to get top dollar, they know how to market it well, and they are turning a profit. I don't think that most people are making, $50,000 to $100,000 off of their short-term rental. What I've seen is maybe more like $30,000, $40,000 after all expenses, but you're building equity in the property. Someone else is essentially paying your mortgage for you, and you can block it out for a week or two if you want to be able to use it yourself. So it's a real draw in our area. Obviously, the short-term rental business has boomed over the last 10 years or so. And there's a good reason for that. It's just really nice to come and have your own place, your own kitchen, your own land or lakefront to be on, plenty of room to spread out. You can have maybe multiple families that share the cost of a rental for a week. And it's a great way to see the area without committing to buying a house right off the bat. So I just wanted to keep you informed of these changes that have happened, and also just some tips on what to look for if you are thinking of purchasing a rental property in Sawyer County. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.